Welcome back to Rich Connections, where we speak the truth most people avoid and explore the edges of what it means to live deeply, fully, and richly. I'm your host, Stacy Rich, life and business coach, energy worker, intuitive, and I'd say the woman who's walked through the fire of unlearning almost everything she was taught, only to come out on the other side more me than ever. And trust me, I'm still forming that. I'm here to shake things up, challenging the norms, breaking the rules, and inviting you to think deeper, feel more, and step into your most unapologetic, turned on life. In episode 1, we talked about the rebel in you, that moment you decide to dig into curiosity and learn to lean into discomfort and unlearn what we think we know. But what comes next? Once you've burned down the beliefs that no longer serves you, once you've questioned the systems, the roles, the relationships, and the rules you thought that you were taught to follow, you're left standing in the ashes with a very big question. Now what? Now what do we do? That's what we're talking about today in episode 2, reclaiming your truth. Because you can't just tear things down, you have to rebuild. You need new roots, truths that are yours. So let's dive in. Okay, let's start here. What does it actually mean to unlearn in the first place? Unlearning isn't about erasing your past. I want to be clear about that, right? We value our past. It's brought us to this point. We're grateful for it, but it's about recognizing where your beliefs came from and deciding if they still serve the woman you are today. A lot of what we think is truth is actually just repetition. So like conditioning, culture, it's survival. For example, maybe you were raised to believe that being selfless meant being silent, that putting yourself last was considered love, or that success had to come through hustle and sacrifice, or that being sexual made you unworthy. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath with me here and let that sink in. I remember being 14 or 15, give or take, still trying to figure out who I was and where I fit in this world. At that age, I made the decision to start going to church, and partly because a friend invited me, but also because I was genuinely searching for something, and I may have not really known that at the time, but I was looking for more of community, belonging, and maybe even an inner sense of peace. But I thought this could be for me, a place with structure, a place to grow. And on the surface, it looked like that. But every time I sat through a service, I felt this quiet tension in my chest, like something wasn't quite lining up. There were moments that moved me, for sure, but for every statement that resonated, there were 2 more that made me pause and think, wait, is that really true for me? I had more questions than answers, and not the kind that led to clarity. It was more like the kind that cracked something open, that created more questions. And looking back, that was the beginning of my unraveling, I truly believe. The moment I started to dig up the roots of the beliefs I had been handed and asked whether I wanted to keep them or not. That experience planted a seed. One that said, you're allowed to question. You're allowed to choose your own truth. This is when I really dug into learning about the bigger questions, reading about religions, personal development, and psychology. What made me so passionate about learning people's perspectives and digging deep within myself to determine what felt true to me and piecing things together for myself, right? And I've been tending to that garden ever since, pulling weeds, planting new ideas, nurturing the soil of who I really am. Reclaiming your truth starts there. With the courage to ask, does this actually belong to me? And let me also say that not that anything was wrong with that church or anything is ever wrong with what you're being handed or witnessing, but does it actually belong to you? Because the first step in reclaiming your truth is naming the lies you've outgrown. And let me be clear again, these lies may be someone else's truth, but two things can be true, and it's your job to determine what is ultimately right for you. And if not, what do I want to believe instead? So ask yourself these three questions. What beliefs do I live by that I didn't consciously choose? Who taught me those beliefs? And did they live the kind of life I want to live? Where do I feel shame or guilt that might actually be programming, not personal failure? And this can be confronting, but I want to offer you this. You are allowed to outgrow what once kept you safe. Unlearning is sacred work. It's where the old stories die so the real you can rise. So once we've pulled all the weeds, the soil is raw. You might feel unsteady, like nothing feels certain anymore. I know I certainly did when questioning my spiritual beliefs. That's normal. This is where you begin to reroute, where you allow the curiosity to unfold, not into someone else's version of truth, but your own. This is the part where you ask yourself, what is true for me right now, even if it's messy? What would I believe if I had never been told who I'm supposed to be? What lights me up? Not because it's impressive, but because it feels right in my body. I'll give you an example from my own life. One of my own rerouting moments. A belief I inherited that I had to completely break up with in order to become more fully myself. So I grew up absorbing this unspoken but very loud message from all directions, right? Not just from my parents, not just from one person, but from society, from just in general. Be a good girl was the narrative. It was everywhere. What I gathered was being a good girl meant being polite, soft-spoken, always smiling, never too loud, never too opinionated, and definitely never too sexual. I learned that if I was sweet, if I was agreeable, and didn't rock the boat, I'd be liked, I'd be accepted, and I'd, quite frankly, be safe. It meant crossing my legs, saying please and thank you, and never ever talking openly about desire, especially sexual desire. I was taught that wanting too much, asking for too much, or enjoying too much made me, well, too much. And that being submissive was attractive, that pleasure was shameful, that speaking boldly, especially about sex, power, or what I wanted was inappropriate, or worse, slutty. That having multiple partners would strip me of my worth. You know, the belief that women shouldn't be sexual with anyone other than the one and only they're committed to. And that being open, expressive, and curious in life would somehow make me less lovable. And for a while, I truly believed it. I internalized it. It actually became my identity. I dimmed myself down, and I swallowed words. I contorted myself to fit this narrow version of acceptability. But here's the truth. None of that ever really felt like me. It felt like a performance. I realized that I had suppressed my ability to express and therefore shut out possibilities for connections altogether. I began to question the narrative fully when I was around someone often who constantly made vulgar expressions. It felt uncomfortable in a way of feeling wrong and tasteless, which was my preconceived judgment. And I began questioning why I felt that way, because these, again, are the moments that most people would judge someone for being vulgar if they're not, and move on from there. But I enjoy learning about myself and why I was triggered, and my feelings were towards tastelessness in the first place. So, that's the curiosity I mentioned in episode 1 about embracing the discomfort. And then I met people who were sexually open that then caused me to dig even deeper into why I believed the way I did, and ultimately discovering the good girl narrative suppressed my true expression of self, which has continued to unfold more and more of my true identity daily. I started asking, what if the good girl narrative is just a cage, but with prettier bars? And that moment, that crack of curiosity became a doorway for me. I started reclaiming parts of myself I had been hiding more and more as I got older. My voice, my sensuality, my appetite for life, my power, and my ultimate truth. I began to explore what I actually like, what turns me on, not just sexually. I don't mean just sexually, but I mean like spiritually, emotionally, creatively. And instead of shame, I felt, freedom. That reclamation, that deep-rooted remembering of who I really am, was the seed that birthed this podcast, because I know I am not alone in this. There are so many women out there still trying to be good girls when their soul is begging them to be whole women. And if that's you, I see you, and you're safe here. That story, my story, is just one example of how powerful it can be to pull out an inherited belief and plant something true in its place. It is still growing, and this podcast is definitely a catalyst to the continuance of that growth that I'm really looking forward to. This is me rerouting on here. So I want you to ask yourself 2 questions. What outdated story have I been living in just to be accepted? And then 2, what belief have I outgrown but haven't given myself permission to truly release? And once you know it, let it go. Let it rot like compost in the soil, because it can feed the new you that's ready to grow. That unraveling, it was terrifying, but it also gave me space to plant new truths, like I am allowed to change my mind. My worth isn't measured by how palatable I am to others. My pleasure is not a problem. It's a compass. And I want to offer you this. You don't have to have your whole belief system figured out overnight. Rerouting happens in layers. It's not linear, but it is yours. So try this. And I'm going to put this on the Rich Connections podcast.com website also as a PDF that you can download. But write a belief breakup letter. I'm serious. Choose just one belief. You can do more if you want, but just choose at least one you're done with and write a goodbye note to it. And I'm serious when I say this. Let me give you some examples, okay? So this is what's going to be on the PDF. So, for example, like I did, the good girl narrative, I have to earn my worth. My value is tied to my productivity. Expressing my needs is selfish. I'm only lovable if I'm easy to handle. If I'm not chosen, I'm not enough. Sensuality and spirituality can't coexist. I'm too emotional to be taken seriously. Speaking up will make me a burden. Money is bad or makes people greedy. I need to be needed to be worthy. Taking up space makes me arrogant. Okay, so all of those are going to be on the PDF that I'm going to upload on the website under the show notes. And then once you've got your belief decided, and it doesn't have to be one of these are just some examples to help you get thinking, but then write your new truth, your declaration, and read it aloud. Let it land in your body. Remember, this is sacred. This is reclamation. This is you rooting back into yourself. Let's talk about the dance between grounding and growth. When you're in a process of transformation, it can be tempting to latch onto a new identity just to feel safe again. But here's what I've learned. Real truth is fluid. It doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present. So how do we stay rooted without becoming rigid? here's some practices I love for when I find myself off balance and unclear and not able to stay present. So one way is what I call body-based awareness, and that's getting out of your head and into your body. One way to do that is putting your feet on the ground and touch your own skin. Ask what feels true here. What am I carrying that isn't mine? And that's just allowing you to be in your body and aware of it. And step 2, breathe and energy check-ins, okay? So take some breaths and check your energy. I also call these reflections. I do this with my students all the time, and you breathe in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Then ask, does this belief expand me or shrink me? I have some of my students doing this daily with a body scan for self-reflections. It's really helpful when you're trying to become more self-aware and create understanding of your own energy. And then third, I create personal rituals. And what I mean by rituals is having like morning grounding rituals and evening releasing practices. Even just placing a hand on your heart and whispering, I am safe to be me, that can change everything. Now, if you're interested in having morning and evening rituals, these are also known as routines. I have 2 practices that I share with all of my students and clients, and I'm going to put that on richconnectionspodcast.com for you to download for free. And then lastly, step 4, community. Surround yourself with people who don't just love the version of you that fits into a box. Meaning, find the people who celebrate your messy middle, your evolution, and your truth. Like people who aren't just liking you for the version of you that they need. The people that support you. Because the more anchored you are in your self-awareness altogether, the more permission you give yourself to evolve. And in so many ways, I continue to educate on self-awareness with my students, and it can improve so much in your life. If you ever need guidance on this or more tools to assist you, I'm happy to help you with this. So just feel free to reach out to me. And that information is in the show notes. And ultimately, that's what rooting is really about. Okay, so creating safety within so you can be wild, so you can be open and ever-changing on the outside. So let me share a story from my own reclamation. A moment when I was living in a life that looked safe on paper, but felt like a slow, what I call leak of my spirit. I was working a corporate job, and my only corporate job. The kind people tell you to be grateful for. I got steady paychecks, good benefits, a clear path forward, right? It was the kind of job that made it easy to stay, easy to play it safe, and easy to convince yourself that this is just how adulthood works. In fact, I stayed there for 5, maybe 5.5 years, and I know people who have stayed there for much longer because it's safe and secure, but my soul didn't buy it. I'd walk in every Monday morning and feel the energy sink before I even hit my desk. Now, I tried to maintain my positivity, but it was really hard. The small talk was always the same. It's Monday. Just counting down to Friday. Only 4 more days. It was like time itself was something to survive. And I remember thinking, is this it? Is this what we're doing? Like trading 5 days of misery for 2 days of freedom? It was soul-sucking. And I was someone who loved life, who lit up rooms, who brought energy, who refused to dim my joy just to fit into a culture of burnout and low-grade bitterness. I remember saying to myself, I will not let this place take my sunshine. And that's when a seed planted itself. What if I only did work that made me love Mondays? Not tolerate them, not push through them, love them. That idea became my compass. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet, but I knew how I wanted to feel. I didn't want to care what day it was because all of it felt aligned, lit up, alive. Leaving that job wasn't just a career move, it was a reclamation. It was ultimately me determining that I wanted to be creative and work for myself. It was me breaking up with the belief that security had to come at the cost of my joy, that stable meant stuck, that a paycheck was worth more than my purpose. And that decision is what led me to pursue creativity, film, coaching, and just ultimate freedom. It's what brought me here to this mic on this podcast, sharing this with you. Because when you reclaim your truth, you don't just change your path, you change your entire relationship with time, with energy, and with life. And ever since I've been rebuilding my life from that place. So, here's your invitation this week. Unplug from one belief you didn't choose. Name it, call it out, write it down, burn the paper if you need to. Then, write one new belief. Say it out loud every morning and post it on your mirror. Let it become your new route. I have an anthem I say to myself every time I'm getting ready and doing my makeup. I'm not going to share it today. But even if you can, take a grounding walk, barefoot if you can. With each step, affirm, I am safe to root into my truth, today's truth. So, if this episode stirred something in you, beautiful. That means your roots are ready. So, tag me at Rich Connections Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you might go. Share what you're unlearning or drop your new truth using the hashtag Rich Connections. I would love to see it. Let's root together. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the show and please leave a review. Your words help this space grow and reach more people reclaiming their truth, just like you. And if you're ready to go deeper into this work, check the show notes for links to my coaching, upcoming workshops, or to submit a bold topic you want me to talk about. Either way, I'm here to serve and I'm happy to work with you however you see fit. So please feel free to reach out. And look forward to the next episode, episode 3, where we're talking about rising above fear and social expectations to create an authentic life. So until next time, remember, rebel, root, rise, and live richly. I'll see you next time, Rich Rebels.